Have you ever wondered why you keep attracting the same toxic relationships, sabotaging your success just when things start going well? Or finding yourself inexplicably angry at people who seem to embody everything you despise? What if I told you that these patterns aren't random coincidences, but clear signs that an invisible force within you is secretly orchestrating your life from the shadows? Carl Jung, one of the most profound minds in psychology, discovered something that most people never realize. We all have a hidden part of our psyche that operates in darkness, making decisions for us, attracting experiences we consciously reject, and keeping us trapped in cycles we desperately want to break. This hidden force is what Jung called the shadow. And today, you're going to discover the unmistakable signs that your shadow has been running your life without your knowledge. In the next few minutes, I'm going to reveal 7 critical signs that your shadow is in control, signs so subtle that most people live their entire lives without recognizing them. You'll learn how to identify the unconscious patterns that have been sabotaging your relationships, your career, and your personal growth. More importantly, you'll understand why becoming aware of these patterns is the first step toward true psychological freedom and authentic self-expression. This isn't just about self-awareness, this is about reclaiming the driver's seat of your own existence. Jung understood that we are far more complex than we pretend to be. Behind our carefully constructed personas, behind the image we present to the world and even to ourselves, lies a vast territory of rejected, denied, and disowned aspects of our personality. These aren't necessarily evil or bad qualities. They're simply parts of ourselves that we've learned to hide, repress, or reject because they didn't fit with our idealized self-image, or because society taught us they were unacceptable. The first and most telling sign that your shadow is running your life is when you find yourself repeatedly triggered by specific types of people or behaviors. Think about it for a moment. Is there a particular personality type that instantly irritates you? Perhaps it's people who are overly confident, or those who seem selfish, or individuals who are too emotional, or maybe those who appear weak and needy. Notice how your body responds when you encounter these people. Do you feel a surge of anger, disgust, or judgment that seems disproportionate to the actual situation? Jung discovered that what we hate most in others is often a disowned part of ourselves. When someone triggers an intense emotional reaction in you, they're acting as a mirror, reflecting back a quality that exists within you, but that you've pushed into your unconscious mind. The confident person you despise might be reflecting your own suppressed need for self-assertion. The selfish individual who annoys you could be showing you your own unacknowledged, self-centered tendencies. The overly emotional person who makes you uncomfortable might be mirroring your own rejected sensitivity. This phenomenon, which Jung called projection, happens because the psyche cannot tolerate having these disowned parts completely eliminated. Instead, it projects them outward, allowing us to see and judge them in others while remaining blind to them in ourselves. The more intense your reaction, the more likely it is that you're encountering a piece of your own shadow. When your shadow is running your life, you become a prisoner of these projections, constantly fighting battles with external enemies who are actually internal aspects of yourself. The psychological consequence of this pattern is profound. You remain trapped in repetitive conflicts, attracting the same types of people and situations over and over again, because the universe is trying to show you something about yourself that you refuse to see. Your shadow will keep presenting you with these mirrors until you develop the courage to look within and reclaim these projected parts. The second sign that your shadow has taken control appears in your self-sabotage patterns, particularly those moments when you inexplicably destroy or abandon something good in your life just as it's reaching its peak. Have you ever noticed how you sometimes make destructive choices right when things are going well, Maybe you pick a fight with your partner when your relationship is deepening, or you procrastinate on an important project just before a deadline, or you engage in behaviors that you know will jeopardize your health, career, or reputation. Jung understood that the shadow often contains not just our rejected negative qualities, but also our disowned positive potential. Many people have a shadow that includes their own power, success, beauty, intelligence, or capacity for joy. If you were raised in an environment where being too successful, too happy, or too powerful was seen as threatening or selfish, you may have unconsciously banished these qualities to your shadow. When you start to embody these positive qualities in your conscious life, your shadow rebels. It whispers that you don't deserve success, that happiness is dangerous, that power corrupts, or that others will hate you if you shine too brightly. This internal saboteur works tirelessly to keep you small, safe, and familiar, even if familiar means suffering. Consider the successful businesswoman who unconsciously sabotages her career advancement because she carries a shadow belief that powerful women are threatening or unlovable. Or think about the talented artist who destroys his work just before showing it to the world because his shadow holds the conviction that artistic expression is selfish or impractical. These aren't conscious choices. They're shadow-driven compulsions that operate below the threshold of awareness. The spiritual consequence of shadow-driven self-sabotage is that you remain disconnected from your authentic power and potential. You live a diminished version of your life, always sensing that there's more available to you, but never quite being able to access it consistently. Your shadow keeps you trapped in cycles of almost but not quite, of getting close to your dreams but never quite achieving them. The third sign reveals itself in your addictive or compulsive behaviors, those repetitive actions that you engage in despite knowing they're harmful or counterproductive. Jung recognized that addictions often represent shadow material seeking expression through distorted channels. When we deny certain aspects of our nature, they don't disappear. They find alternative routes to the surface, often through compulsive behaviors that provide temporary relief but ultimate suffering. Consider how your addictions or compulsions might be distorted expressions of legitimate psychological needs. The workaholic might be expressing a disowned need for recognition and worth through socially acceptable overwork. The shopping addict could be trying to fill an inner emptiness that stems from disconnection from their authentic self. The person addicted to social media validation might be expressing a disowned need for genuine connection and recognition. Food addictions often carry complex shadow material around nurturing, pleasure, control, and self-worth. Sexual compulsions may represent disowned aspects of power, intimacy, or vitality. Substance addictions frequently mask disowned emotional sensitivity, creativity, or spiritual longing. The key insight is that the compulsive behavior is rarely about the object of addiction itself. It's about what that object symbolically represents in terms of disowned psychological needs. When your shadow is running your life through addictive patterns, you're essentially feeding the wrong wolf. You're trying to satisfy authentic psychological and spiritual hungers through methods that can never truly nourish you. This creates a cycle of temporary satisfaction followed by deeper emptiness, which drives more compulsive behavior. The transformative realization here is that your addictions are breadcrumbs leading back to lost parts of yourself. By understanding what psychological need your compulsive behavior is trying to meet, you can begin to find healthier ways to honor that need. The workaholic can learn to seek recognition through authentic achievement rather than burnout. The validation seeker can learn to develop genuine self-worth rather than external approval addiction. The fourth sign manifests in your relationship patterns, specifically the tendency to repeatedly attract partners or friends who embody qualities you claim to dislike or find problematic. Jung understood that we don't randomly attract relationships. We magnetize people who carry certain psychological energies that resonate with our unconscious material. If you consistently find yourself in relationships with people who are emotionally unavailable, you might be projecting your own disowned emotional unavailability. If you repeatedly attract partners who are controlling, you may be disowning your own need for control or power. If you're constantly drawn to people who are unreliable or chaotic, you might be rejecting your own spontaneous, unpredictable nature. This happens because your shadow seeks integration through relationship. The parts of yourself that you've disowned will attempt to complete themselves through union with others who embody those qualities. It's as if your psyche is trying to become whole by borrowing missing pieces from other people, but this can never work because external completion is an impossible goal. Jung also recognized that we often attract people who will trigger our shadow material, forcing us to confront aspects of ourselves we'd prefer to avoid. The partner who pushes your buttons, the friend who brings out your jealousy, the colleague who activates your insecurities. These people are often serving as unconscious teachers, showing you exactly where your psychological work lies. When your shadow is running your relationships, you remain trapped in victim consciousness, believing that you're simply unlucky in love or friendship, never recognizing that you're actually attracting specific energies that match your internal psychological state. You might find yourself repeatedly saying things like, "Why do I always attract narcissists?" Or "All men are emotionally unavailable," or "I can't trust anyone," without recognizing that these patterns are reflections of your own internal dynamics. The spiritual consequence is that your relationships become mirrors for your shadow work, rather than genuine connections between whole individuals. You remain stuck in codependent patterns, unconsciously using others to carry parts of yourself, which prevents authentic intimacy and mutual growth. The fifth sign appears in your emotional reactivity, particularly those moments when your emotional response seems completely disproportionate to the triggering event. We all experience emotional reactions, but shadow-driven emotions have a particular quality. They feel overwhelming, they seem to come from nowhere, and they often leave you feeling confused about why you reacted so strongly. Jung understood that intense emotional reactions often indicate that we've touched upon shadow material. When someone makes a casual comment and you find yourself consumed with rage, when a minor setback triggers deep despair, when a small criticism sends you into defensive fury, your shadow is likely being activated. These disproportionate reactions happen because the current situation is unconsciously connected to deeper, unresolved psychological material. The person who becomes enraged at being ignored at a social gathering might be carrying shadow material around their need for attention and recognition. The individual who feels devastated by constructive criticism could be harboring disowned feelings of inadequacy or shame. What makes these reactions particularly challenging is that they feel completely justified in the moment. Your emotional system is responding not just to the current situation, but to all the accumulated, unprocessed material that the situation has activated. You might find yourself thinking or saying things that feel extreme, attacking the other person's character rather than addressing the specific issue, or making sweeping generalizations based on single incidents. The shadow often expresses itself through what Jung called possession, moments when an autonomous complex takes over your personality. During these times, you might act in ways that feel foreign to your usual character, saying things you later regret, or behaving in ways that seem inconsistent with your values. After the emotional storm passes, you might wonder where that reaction came from, feeling almost as if someone else temporarily took control of your behavior. When your shadow is driving your emotional life, you become unpredictable and reactive, damaging relationships and undermining your own goals through emotional volatility. People around you may begin to walk on eggshells, never knowing what might trigger an intense reaction. More importantly, you lose access to your genuine emotions because they become contaminated with shadow material. Before we continue exploring these crucial signs, I want to invite you to engage with this journey of self-discovery. If these insights are resonating with you, if you're beginning to recognize patterns in your own life, consider subscribing to this channel and sharing your reflections in the comments below. This work of shadow integration is not meant to be done in isolation. We grow through community and shared understanding. Your willingness to look honestly at these patterns is already a profound act of courage and consciousness. The sixth sign reveals itself through your perfectionism and the harsh inner critic that drives much of your self-improvement efforts. While the desire for growth and excellence might seem positive, shadow-driven perfectionism has a particular quality. It's never satisfied. It focuses on what's wrong rather than celebrating what's right. And it carries an underlying energy of self-punishment rather than self-love. Jung recognized that perfectionism often serves as a defense against our disowned imperfections, mistakes, and vulnerabilities. When we cannot tolerate being human, flawed, or imperfect, we develop a tyrannical inner voice that demands impossible standards. This voice promises that if we just work hard enough, achieve enough, or improve enough, we'll finally be worthy of love and acceptance. The shadow aspect of perfectionism is that it's often driven by disowned shame, inadequacy, or fear of rejection. The perfectionist has unconsciously decided that their natural, imperfect self is unacceptable, so they must create an improved, flawless version to be worthy of love. This creates an exhausting internal split between the real self and the idealized self, with the shadow containing all the rejected human qualities. Consider how your perfectionism might be expressing shadow material. Do you become anxious or angry when things don't go exactly as planned? Do you have difficulty accepting compliments because you immediately focus on areas that could be improved? Do you procrastinate on projects because you're afraid they won't be perfect? Do you judge others harshly for the same mistakes or limitations you won't tolerate in yourself? When your shadow is driving your perfectionism, you remain trapped in a prison of your own making, constantly striving for an impossible ideal while rejecting the beautiful imperfection of your actual humanity. You miss opportunities for genuine connection because you're too busy managing your image. You sacrifice presence for performance, authenticity for approval. The spiritual consequence is that you remain disconnected from self-compassion and genuine self-acceptance. Your worth becomes contingent on external achievement rather than inherent value, leaving you perpetually anxious and unsatisfied. The perfectionist shadow keeps you running on a hamster wheel of self-improvement that never leads to the promised land of finally being enough. Now we come to the seventh and perhaps most subtle sign, the tendency to give away your power through excessive people-pleasing, conflict avoidance, or the inability to set healthy boundaries. While these behaviors might seem kind or spiritual, they often mask significant shadow material around aggression, selfishness, and personal power. Jung understood that many people, particularly those raised in environments where certain emotions or behaviors were forbidden, develop shadow material around their natural assertiveness, anger, and self-advocacy. If expressing your needs, disagreeing with others, or standing up for yourself was punished or seen as selfish, you may have banished these qualities to your shadow. When healthy aggression and self-assertion are in the shadow, they often express themselves through passive-aggressive behavior, martyrdom, or sudden explosive outbursts. The person who can never say no directly might express their resistance through chronic lateness, forgetting commitments, or developing mysterious illnesses that prevent them from following through. The individual who avoids all conflict might build up resentment that eventually erupts in disproportionate anger or leads to the abrupt ending of relationships. This pattern is particularly common among those who identify as spiritual or conscious individuals. There's often an unconscious belief that anger, selfishness, or assertiveness are unspiritual qualities that evolved people don't possess. This creates a spiritual bypassing of natural human emotions and needs, pushing vital psychological energy into the shadow where it becomes distorted. Consider how your inability to set boundaries might be shadow-driven. Do you find yourself saying yes when you want to say no, then feeling resentful? Do you avoid difficult conversations, hoping problems will resolve themselves? Do you pride yourself on being low maintenance while secretly feeling unseen and unheard? Do you judge others who seem selfish or demanding while you struggle to advocate for your own needs? When your shadow contains your personal power and healthy aggression, you become a victim of your own unconscious patterns. You attract people who will take advantage of your inability to set limits. You find yourself overwhelmed, resentful, and exhausted from constantly putting others' needs before your own. Paradoxically, your attempts to be good and selfless often create more harm than honest self-advocacy would. The psychological and spiritual consequence is that you remain disconnected from your authentic personal power, your ability to create the life you want, and your capacity to contribute your unique gifts to the world. Your shadow-driven people-pleasing keeps you small and ineffective, preventing you from stepping into your full potential and genuine service. But here's what Jung discovered that changes everything. The very qualities you've banished to your shadow often contain the keys to your greatest gifts and most authentic power. The anger you've rejected might contain your passion for justice. The selfishness you despise might hold your capacity for healthy self-care and boundary setting. The aggression you fear might be the assertiveness you need to create the life you want. The journey of shadow integration isn't about becoming someone different. It's about becoming more fully who you already are. It's about reclaiming the disowned parts of your psyche and learning to express them in conscious, healthy ways. When you can own your selfishness, you become genuinely generous. When you can acknowledge your anger, you develop real compassion. When you can accept your imperfections, you discover authentic confidence. Jung called this process individuation, the journey towards psychological wholeness and authentic self-expression. It requires the courage to face what you've been avoiding, to own what you've been projecting, and to integrate what you've been rejecting. This isn't comfortable work, but it's the most important work you'll ever do, because it's the work of becoming fully human. The path forward begins with awareness. Now that you can recognize these 7 signs, you have the power to interrupt the unconscious patterns that have been running your life. When you notice yourself being triggered by someone, pause and ask what quality in them might reflect something disowned in you. When you catch yourself sabotaging your success, explore what belief or fear might be driving the behavior. When you recognize an addictive pattern, investigate what authentic need it might be attempting to meet in a distorted way. Start paying attention to your relationship patterns, your emotional reactions, your perfectionist tendencies, and your people-pleasing behaviors, not with judgment, but with curiosity. Each of these patterns is a doorway back to lost parts of yourself, an invitation to reclaim aspects of your humanity that you've been unconsciously rejecting. Remember that shadow work isn't about eliminating these patterns overnight. The shadow developed over years or decades as a survival mechanism, and it will take time, patience, and often professional support to integrate consciously. The goal isn't to get rid of your shadow, but to develop a conscious relationship with it, to recognize when it's driving your behavior, and to choose more authentic expressions of your full humanity. This work of shadow integration is ultimately an act of love, both for yourself and for the world. When you're no longer unconsciously projecting your disowned material onto others, you can see people more clearly and relate to them more authentically. When you're not sabotaging your own success, you can contribute your gifts more fully. When you're not driven by compulsive behaviors, you can make choices that truly serve your highest good. As you embark on this journey of shadow awareness and integration, remember that this is not a destination, but an ongoing process of self-discovery and conscious evolution. Every moment offers an opportunity to choose awareness over unconsciousness, integration over projection, authenticity over performance. The very fact that you've stayed with this exploration, that you've been willing to look honestly at these potentially uncomfortable patterns, demonstrates that you're already on the path of individuation. Your shadow has been running your life not out of malice, but because it contains vital aspects of your psyche that demand expression. By developing a conscious relationship with these hidden parts of yourself, you reclaim your power to create a life that truly reflects your authentic nature. This is the gift Jung offered the world, the understanding that our wholeness lies not in perfection, but in the courageous integration of all aspects of our humanity, light and shadow alike. The journey to psychological freedom and authentic self-expression begins with this moment of recognition. Your shadow may have been secretly running your life, but now you have the awareness to take back the wheel and drive your own destiny with consciousness, compassion, and genuine self-knowledge.